Hey guys, welcome to my garden. Today I wanted to continue my spotlight on native plants for the home gardener. I'm going to show you two plants today. We're going to take a look at yarrow, which just came into bloom this past week, so I wanted to show you that. And then we're also going to take a look at wild ginger. Yarrow is a plant that is awesome for full sun, hot, dry spots in the garden. And wild ginger is a great ground cover for part shade to full shade areas in the yard. So I wanted to show you two ends of the spectrum to give you some more ideas. If you missed my first video on the importance of native plants in the home garden, I will link that below. I just get a little more into why native plants are so important and why everybody has a role to play in planting native plants in their yards to protect the environment and the bugs and animals that live here. So hopefully this video gives you some more ideas for how you can use native plants in your garden. So I'm going to spin the camera around and we're going to take a look at yarrow and wild ginger. We're going to go take a look at the yarrow first. So this white flower here is yarrow. You can see that it has this really cool ferny foliage. And then it gets pretty tall. That's probably 2 feet, 2.5 feet tall. And then it has these clusters of flowers on top. So yarrow is really good for hot, dry, full sun locations. This is a tough plant. It will tolerate pretty poor soil, not a lot of water. It's tough. So if you have a spot like that in your garden and you want to help out the pollinators, this is a great choice. This attracts bees, butterflies, and other pollinators. And yarrow is native to, based on the research I did, it can pretty much be found all around the world. You can find it in Europe, Asia, and the majority of North America. There are some different varieties. So the variety that's considered native to North America is this white yarrow, or there's another yarrow that's bright yellow. That's also considered to be a true native. But when you go to your local garden center, they are going to have a lot of different varieties of yarrow. So there are a lot of cultivars out there, which is where you can get some really interesting different colors, bigger plants. So this is pretty wispy. But I'm going to show you another type of yarrow plant that I have that is a lot more full and has a lot more blooms on it. But this is what yarrow looks like the way it naturally occurs in the wild. But let me go show you the other cultivar that I have. And some people think, well, if it's a cultivar and it's not found naturally in the wild, then is it technically considered native? And some of the plant purists will say that, yeah, technically this wouldn't be considered native. But as a home gardener, you know, if I'm looking at a plant and I know it's a cultivar of a native plant and it has the same shape of flower, even though it might have been bred to have different colors or to be bigger or smaller, if I plant it and it's still attracting pollinators, then for my purposes, I think that's okay. So this is another variety of yarrow I have. This is much bigger, a much bigger plant. The foliage is bigger. And it has these really pretty pink blooms. I have the tag down here. So this is called Summer Pastels. So that's the variety. This will bloom from now until fall. So this thing blooms all summer. And it's a zone 3 through 8. So this thing will pretty much grow anywhere. I haven't seen these yellow blooms yet, so I'm excited to see if I get mostly pink or if I get some of these other colors too. So that's yarrow. So again, that will attract bees and butterflies. It's going to bloom all year. I don't need to water it. I don't fertilize it. I planted it and I let it go. No maintenance. The only thing I do in the fall, going into winter, when everything dies back, I'll cut it back to the ground, but that's it. This also smells really good. It's a really nice, sweet smell. I have this all over the garden. I pretty much, every flower bed I have that's in full sun, I stick yarrow in it because it's an awesome plant. And I like how the flower clusters just kind of float above everything else. Let's go take a look at wild ginger. So we're going to move into the shady part of my garden. This is sort of a little woodland area. So this is wild ginger. This is an amazing ground cover. And this plant is native to the majority of North America, especially the eastern to middle parts of the US and Canada. It doesn't like hot, dry weather as much, so you don't find it in the Southwest as much as you find it in the rest of the country. But this is a great ground cover. It does so well in part shade. This is a mostly shade spot. You might get a little bit of dappled sunlight, but that's it. And this is a zone 4 through 6. This spreads pretty quickly too. It spreads with rhizomes. So, and they're pretty shallow. So I don't know if we'll be able to see. Yeah, this thing is pretty shallowly rooted in the ground. And it does like average to moist soil. It does not like to be too dry. So this is much better if you have, you know, an area that's a little more moist in the shade, or just average and not too dry. It has these really pretty heart-shaped leaves. And then one of the interesting things I actually just found out about this plant this year is that each of these has a single flower at the base, and now they're going to seed. But in the spring, they had these little red flowers down here. So you can't see these when you're just looking at the plant. All you can see is the foliage. But right at the base of the plant are these tiny little flowers, and they're red. And I did a little research on it because I thought, you know, what would be pollinating this? Because it's so close to the ground. It's blooming in the spring, and then they're gone. So from what I could find, these are actually pollinated by small flies and gnats and things that come up from the ground in the spring when they're waking up. They can easily get to these little flowers. You can kind of see the shape a little bit better. So I thought that was interesting. A lot of times when we think of pollinators, we automatically think of bees or butterflies, but pollinators are flies, they're gnats, they're even ants sometimes, and they're all important and they all have a role to play. So again, just making sure that we have a variety of plants in our gardens so that we're supporting all of the different levels of insects and animals around. But yeah, if you need a ground cover for a shady spot, I highly recommend this. And this is another one that I don't fertilize, I don't water it. It just does its thing. And it looks great from spring until fall. I do have a patch of it under this tree where it's a little dry, and you can see that it's not as happy here because it just doesn't get enough moisture. So the leaves are smaller, they're not as dense. So that's just something to think about if you're thinking about where you would want to put this in your own yard or garden. I like how it sort of grows underneath the hostas too. So it's also good because it's a ground cover at keeping the weeds at bay in these shadier spots too. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions about anything I talked about or any comments, please put a comment below. If you want to see more videos about the native plants I have growing in my yard, please like and subscribe. Hopefully this video inspires you to just think about some other options that are native to plant in your own garden. I will also link my original video where I just go into a little more detail on native plants. I'll link that below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.